Hi everyone, welcome back to Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Today's video is all about my least favourite books of 2022 and my DNFs. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name's Alice and I have way too many books. Hopefully today's video will be quite short because it's all about the books that I didn't love in 2022. I read a grand total of 177 books in 2022, so I do not have enough videos to be able to talk about all of them, but I did want to mention in passing the books that I do not think were worth my time and effort. That sounds really harsh, and I've just filmed my best book, so at least I'm feeling happy from that, and I hopefully won't go on too much of a rant. 2022 was the year that I learned to DNF, and I finally DNF'd a book, I think probably back in May time, maybe June, and I feel good about this. I had not DNF'd a book for absolutely years. My main system used to be to just leave books on my currently reading shelf for sometimes years without ever picking them up. I'm now realising that that was kind of a quiet DNF in some cases. But yeah, I thought I would tell you a little bit about the 7 books that I DNF'd this year, because I only DNF'd 7. I still need to get better at that. And I've also got 4 books to just give a mention to that I really didn't like. These will be my worst books of 2022. This is not to say that any of these books are bad books. Especially with the DNFs, I know that there are people who really loved some of these books, and that's fine. What I love about BookTube is that we all have different opinions. We all DNF different books for different reasons, and we all love books for different reasons, and BookTube would be a very boring place if we all just agreed what were the best books and agreed what were the worst books. So here are mine. My really least favourite books were definitely the ones that I didn't have the patience to finish. So I'm going to save my DNFs till last, and first of all I'm going to talk about my worst books that I made it all the way through. All 4 of them are kind of books that I wish I didn't carry on with, and 2 of these books were from Garb August. I have often spoken about Garb August in such a way as to make out that I didn't enjoy myself in Garb August. I really did, but the thing about my Garb August reading was I really tried to push myself to read genres I would never in a million years read, such as the likes of Jilly Cooper and Jackie Collins. I appreciate that many people love those books. They are not for me, and I know that firmly now. So I have 2 books on this list that I gave 2 stars to. I have one that I gave 1.5 and one that I gave 1. So let's start with the best of the worst, which was The Colorado Kid by Stephen King. I don't have any of these books to show because I've got rid of all of them. The Colorado Kid by Stephen King annoyed me because even though it told me from the beginning that there would be no solution to this mystery, that still really annoyed me. There was no plot whatsoever for me in this book. Maybe some people like reading mysteries that don't really have a plot, but I didn't. So it was only a 2-star for me. There was not enough going on in this very short book for me to bother to DNF it, but there also wasn't enough going on in it for me to give it more than 2 stars. So didn't enjoy that one at all. And I will say that is the first book by Stephen King that I've felt that way about. I do normally enjoy his books. So the second one to talk about, I really have very little memory of, and that was The Breaking Point by Mary Roberts Rinehart. I gave this 2 stars, but it was a book that I was so disappointed with. I think this was because within the group that I was reading it with were a lot of fans of Mary Roberts Rinehart who had all told me to read Mary Roberts Rinehart. I think Mary Roberts Rinehart is kind of thought of as a US Agatha Christie who just hasn't been given enough credit for her mystery writing. This book turned out to not really be that much of a mystery. There was too much romance for my liking, and the story was just so painfully slow and plodding, and I carried on reading it because some of the mystery elements made me want to find out the ending, but it was so boring to me. I will try another Mary Roberts Reinhardt. I will try one of her, hopefully one of her best. But this was very off-putting. It was not a read that I enjoyed at all. My 1.5 star, so getting worse, was The World is Full of Divorced Women by Jackie Collins. Now, this book is fine on one level. It does exactly what it says on the tin. I didn't expect Jackie Collins to be writing like wonderful, wonderful books. But, I mean, this was never going to be a book that I was going to love. It's just full of divorced women talking about sex, and I read it because it was short and I wanted to have finished at least one of the sort of bonk busters that I was trying to read in Carb August. But yeah, it was an extremely flimsy throwaway plot, and I don't think I will be picking up Jackie Collins again. In at number 1 on my books that I most disliked this year was, of course, Flowers in the Attic by Virginia Andrews. I buddy read this with 2 other lovely booktubers, Jack from Spread Bookjoy and Gemma from Gemma Books. Gemma was the sensible one. She DNF'd this before the end, and I wish I had done that. So this is famously a book about horrible topics such as incest. And I thought, because of that, the book would be really disgusting and really interesting. No. This book is so dull. So boring. I mean, no. It's about 4 children locked in an attic, effectively, or in a room in a house. As you can imagine, if people were locked in an attic, it's very tedious. Nearly the entire book was about their boring lives. And by the time you get to any disgusting content in this book, it's been so dull that you actually want to get to the disgusting content. The rest of it is just so mind-numbingly boring. So I do not recommend Flowers in the Attic, and I appreciate that some people love Virginia Andrews for some reason, but I thought this was not only tedious in the extreme, but very poorly written, and it was just an absolute no from me. If I could go back and DNF this, I would do that. It was bad. It was bad. That's all I have to say about Flowers in the Attic. Anyway, let's quickly run through my DNFs from my least offensive to me DNF to the most. I DNF'd only 7 books, and the 7th book, I really could have carried on reading it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this book. It's stuff I've been reading by Nick Hornby. This is a collection of, I believe, articles that appeared in a newspaper or possibly a magazine that are about the books Nick Hornby has been reading. The previous book to this, The Complete Polysyllabic Spree, I really enjoyed. I got loads of book ideas out of it that were books that I really wanted to read and that I have since read and enjoyed. But this one, for some reason, I just wasn't feeling it. I think basically the time to read this book had gone by because the columns were from like 2006, 2007, and none of the books were really interesting me, and none of the articles were really interesting me. This book doesn't really serve a place in this video because there was nothing wrong with it, but I was just not feeling it, which is real progress for me, because DNFing something that was actually on my shelves and that I wasn't actually finding actively bad is real progress for me, because it shows that I'm starting to realise when I'm not enjoying a book and just putting it aside. The other book that I DNF'd from my own shelves was The Cutting Room by Louise Welsh, and again I could have continued reading this book, and it was a buddy read with Janelle, so I felt really bad for DNFing it, but I just wasn't enjoying the style of this book at all, and it was one that I completely did not want to pick up, and it was making me feel very reading slumpy. So there was very little wrong with this book. I think that other people who enjoy sort of gritty, really gritty crime books would like this. I did not. In at number 5, this is the third book that I actually probably could have continued reading to the end, and that was Scruples by Judith Krantz, another Garb August entry. So what was different about this one from the other Garb August DNF is that there was actually some parts of the storyline of this that weren't too bad, but when it was about sex, it was so cringeworthy and so terrible to read that I just couldn't continue. There are phrases in this book that have scarred into my brain that I wish I had never seen on the page. So yeah, but other parts of the storyline were fine. It is like a really over-the-top sort of 80s book, and I think that probably I would have been better off with the mini-series, which looks like it might have been hilarious. In at number 4 was my very first DNF for many years, The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. Again, with this one, I probably could have pushed myself to read the second half, the last 50% of it, but I just would have been really irritated throughout, because although a lot of people absolutely loved this book, there was very little I was personally connecting with. I was getting really irritated with the narration that was by a tree, because the narration that was by a tree was just packed with similes and metaphors, and I couldn't read any more of it. I wasn't interested enough in the rest of the storyline to bother. I don't think I would ever try to read this book again. No. In at number 3, my third most disliked book of the year was Glory by No Violet Bulawayo. I tried to read this for the Booker Prize. Firstly, at fault with me not liking this book, I think, was the comparison of it to Animal Farm. I loved Animal Farm, I thought it was great. I can see why there is a comparison, but I just absolutely did not like the way that Bulawayo writes her animals. Like, they weren't animal-like at all. They could have been humans, and it would have been probably better, to be honest, because them being animals was quite annoying. It was too political for me, and the main problem that I had with it was that I was listening to it on audiobook, luckily free from the library, and I just felt like this book was shouting at me, absolutely shouting at me the whole time. It was just full of these animals shouting about the same thing over and over again, in my eyes. So I know a lot of people really enjoyed Glory. I wasn't one of them, and I probably DNF'd this after about 30% of it. My second least favourite book of the year was my final Garb August entry on this list, which was Score by Jilly Cooper. This book was just appallingly dull. For a book about sex, there was very little sex, and it was just about repulsive rich people who made me want to almost tear up the book, and I've never wanted to tear up a book in my life. I can't put into words how boring Score was. It was such a thick book. It was like an absolute doorstop. It was nearly 1,000 pages. And the pages I read of it were just so boring. And to make matters worse, just before I DNF'd it, someone was about to kill a dog with absolutely no reason for that. And I always thought Jilly Cooper was like a really animal-driven person who would not write something like that. I definitely couldn't have continued with it. It would very much have been a waste of reading time. I know Jilly Cooper's very popular. To me, this book was awful in the extreme. So no thank you to that, and I don't think I'll be trying any Jilly Coopers. Now, my top number 1 most hated book of 2022. This is the one I would say I actually hated, and hate is a very strong word. I attempted to read this because I was trying to read Time Magazine's top 10 of 2021, and this book featured on it quite high up, and it was called The Life of the Mind by Christine Smallwood. I really don't want to go into another rant about this book. If you want to see me ranting about this book every time I mention it, then please do go and check out my video about Time Magazine's top 10 of 2021, which I will link in the description down below. I'll try and talk about it very briefly here without ranting. The Life of the Mind by Christine Smallwood is about a horrible, horrible woman and her mundane life details, but written in the most disgusting way you could possibly write it. I feel terrible every time I talk about this book because I say how much I dislike this woman, and then I remember that the book is about the days after she's had a miscarriage. But she did not care about this at all, except so that she could talk in really excruciatingly disgusting detail about her symptoms, I suppose. I can't go into further details because I was so disgusted. There was at least one point before I DNF'd it where I wanted to never ever look at the book again, and I carried on because I was really trying to read it. I got to 50% in the end. I just couldn't read any more. If you like books that are about really unlikable narrators and that are also very disgusting from a bodily functions point of view, I would recommend The Life of the Mind by Christine Smallwood. I'm going to try never to talk about it again because it's not just the worst book I read last year, it's the worst book I've ever read. That's how much I disliked it. That thankfully brings us to the end of my worst books of 2022. It was overall a really good reading year, and if you want to be cheered up after all this ranting, please go over and check out my video about my best reads of 2022. Let me know in the comments, did you have any books that you DNF'd or really, really didn't gel with last year? And if so, what were they so that I can avoid them? As I've said, these were only my opinions, and I am sure that there is someone out there who would like each of these books. If that's you, I would love to talk to you. Let me know if you've read any of these and loved them. So if you have enjoyed this video today, please do give it a like. Please do consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll hope very much to see you all again soon for another video all about books here on Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Bye for now.